Canada faces serious economic, political, and military threats from the Trump administration.
Quite the turn of events. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a report out of America. It's a list of names of people donating to the anti-ICE protests in America. They've raised something like $600,000. And of that, there's some Canadians, but some noteworthy Canadians. Talking people in institutions, people linked to public organizations, the Cowichan tribe that's doing the First Nation land grab here in British Columbia. We also have Scott Bessent, Donald Trump's Secretary of the Treasury, once again clapping back at Mark Carney. Got some other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got some wild polling data, and hold your reaction for a minute here as we go through this, because we've got new Leger poll showing the Liberals at 47%, the Conservatives at 38%, the Bloc at 6%, the NDP at 5%, the Greens at 3%, showing Carney has a commanding lead. And we got RIOT modeling this out, 206 seats plus 37, the Conservatives down to 112, and the Bloc at 22. Now, to know what's going on here, RIOT has already broken it down. The main reason Nanos and Angus Reid did detect a Liberal surge, while Leger and Liaison did. The last Liaison Strategies one was also like 5 or so percentage points higher than the Conservative 6%. We can see Angus Reid was 41 to 38. Liaison Strategies 42 to 34. So this is what we're comparing here. And then Nanos' recent one was 39 to 35. So Schreitis goes on here and says the reason for the big difference is because the poll didn't name the candidate in some and named it in others. And when they put Mark Carney's Liberal Party of Canada, that's when the percentage goes up, 47%. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. In contrast, when it says Conservative Party of Canada or Liberal Party of Canada, you get 38 to 41. The name recognition is boosting Carney in the polls. Wyatt has a great take on this too. For Liberals to trust this Leger poll, you would have to seriously believe the Bloc have dropped 12% in Quebec, 3% nationally, at a time when the PQ leads provincially by a margin of 12. The separatists, the provincial separatists are absolutely dominating there. And he's right. The Bloc are not going to be dropping when the PQ separatists are absolutely surging in Quebec. Not to mention NDP fell 3%, Greens fell 2%, Liberals suddenly gained 8% since November. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't all stack up. There's also response bias. Liberals are more likely to pick up the phone right now versus Conservatives. And as I mentioned in a previous video, a lot of people just don't know what Mark Carney is all about. They just know a resume. They're like, oh, that guy must be good. He's a banker. They don't really know what his agenda is. But when they see Liberal Party, they're like, yuck, that's the party that destroyed our country. There's a bunch of confusion here, and all we really need to do is just put it across Canada who Mark Carney is and just clear this up. Moving ahead, we've got Tiff Macklin here announcing they're basically not touching the interest rate, staying flat.
The unemployment rate remains high at 6.8%. Youth unemployment is particularly elevated, and relatively few businesses say they plan to hire more workers in coming months. Overall, economic growth is expected to pick up gradually. The Bank of Canada projects annual average GDP growth of 1.1% in 2026 and 1.5% in 2027.
That's a miserable outlook. As this guy says, Carney, the economic genius. Moving ahead from Juno News, we've got exclusive name-matching Canadian politicians appear in anti-ICE protest donor leak. Leaked donation records from groups organizing anti-ICE protests appear to suggest that Canadian municipal politicians, union organizers, and academics are financially contributing to them. Uh-oh. So just to set this up, we have this here from this account, Cam Higby, news and commentator on the ground reporting, and it was released through this account here, Data Republican. It says one of the files released by Cam Higby, a resources file, directs people with money to a website, Stand With Minnesota, which in turn directs donors to a campaign ran by Trending the Soil on Chuffed. And the first donation came from Johnny Sopolytuyuk, a Canadian-based community organizer who's a part of the Chuffed leadership and specializes in fundraising. He's most likely a central figure in raising money. So this is coming off a Republican American account here. They're naming a Canadian right off the bat. And that's what we have here. Leaked donation record appears to include names identical to those of multiple elected officials, including one school trustee, one city councillor in BC. Others named to the cause were linked to Canadian identities of Public Service Union regional representative, a McGill University professor, and a member of the Cowichan tribes. Going ahead here, says one of the donor names here was Alison Gu. The name appears to correspond with Burnaby, BC City Councillor Alison Gu, who has a history as a climate activist. I think that's probably the person. So they tried to reach out, didn't receive any response. There's also Christian Schneider, which appears to correspond to a Burnaby school trustee elected under the Burnaby Citizens Association. Schneider is also serving as the chair of the Burnaby Board of Education. It also mentions other funders exposed by the leak is the Canadian Union organizer. The group chat messages dubbed Signalgate shine a light on how to coordinate a campaign and has led to tensions with Washington over its attempt to crack down on illegal immigration received its funding. Goes on to say here that Johnny Sopotujek, one of the first donors there, Canadian Union organizer, and the North American Workers' Rights Movement led at the crowdfunding platform Chuffed, according to a September 2025 LinkedIn profile. As it mentioned there, Stand With Minnesota fundraising website, which routes donors to the Tending the Soil campaign on Chuffed. As the first donor, Sopotujek seeded the campaign with $100 Canadian, and that was on January 8th. And as of January 26th, the donation list shows $8,931 worth of Canadian contributions. It says the campaign has collected more than $671,000.
Who's there? Oh, yeah, I got that shit on the último, pero está gozando y todo, no puede regresar.
So it just goes on to mention this Chuffed is an Australian social justice crowdfunding platform, because apparently they have one of those. And then later on this article here, it talks about the Freedom Convoy and how this was ruled in court that Trudeau and Freeland and Mark Carney and all of them who supported it shouldn't have done it. It was deemed unconstitutional. And what do we have here? Well, Canadian politicians and U.S. donations were tantamount to foreign interference and American-funded extremism. NDP Heather McPherson argued at the time that the donations were a national emergency and evidence of foreign interference, while Mark Carney said foreign donors were funders of an insurrection, and the Canadian lawmaker should take every step within the law to identify and thoroughly punish them. The federal government repeatedly cited claims of foreign-funded protest financing to justify invoking the Emergencies Act, with foreign donations presented as a national security concern. Despite the anti-convoy rhetoric from politicians, none of the convoy groups operated anything resembling sophisticated, coordinated network designed to overthrow the federal government. So what's going to happen here? Is the Canadian government going to lock down the bank accounts of all these people named up here because they're a threat to the country? No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do anything. This is just another case of hypocrisy here in Canada. So there's more going on to this story that I will bring up at a later time, because I already have some more details that are running in parallel to this. Let's just say this is the tip of the iceberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Federal Court of Appeal has once again affirmed that this Liberal government broke the most supreme law in this country, the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, when it wrongly used the Emergencies Act, and also that it violated the charter rights of Canadians by freezing the bank accounts of political protesters and limiting the legal right to protest. If this truly is a new government, will they say to Canadians right now that they will accept this ruling, uphold the civil liberties of Canadians, and not appeal this to the Supreme Court?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as a proud resident of the National Capital Region, I can only but lament this member's repeated, and I will give him this, he's been consistent on this, his repeated endorsement of the occupation of this downtown, of the disturbance and unbelievable annoyance that this created for residents of downtown Ottawa, and of the fact that it was an unlawful demonstration, Mr. Speaker, that ultimately was ended by the good graces and very Canadian model of cooperative law enforcement, Mr. Speaker.
Moving ahead, we've got a clip here from Rhonda Kirkland asking Melanie Joly if she regrets being a part of invoking the Emergencies Act on Canadians.
The Liberal government assured Canadians that invoking the Emergencies Act complied with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The courts have since ruled twice that the government violated the Charter and failed to meet the legal threshold. Do you regret voting for and enacting the Emergencies Act?
10 seconds, and then we have to turn to...
Yes or no?
I think this is a question also that is before the courts and
Yes or no? Do you regret it?
Okay, I'm sorry. This is all the time we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the face here of someone who doesn't care about Canadians. She only cares about her paycheck. That paycheck that will be going up to, I think, $322,000 this year. Yeah, nice little pay bump every single year. These greedy Liberals keep giving themselves pay increase. April 1st, the Government of Canada released their National Cyber Threat Assessment to Canada. That's right. Over the past 4 years, at least 20 networks associated with the Government of Canada Association, agencies and departments have been compromised by the PRC cyber threat actors, the People's Republic of China. As she's highlighted here, the most comprehensive cyber security threat facing Canada is the PRC. It mentions here People's Republic of China, the PRC. Severe high-level political and commercial objectives. But Mark Carney wants to do more business with them because they're so trustworthy, aren't they? With that, we've got countries with the best reputations. Well, first off, we've got 2024 rank and 2025, so it just shows how the rankings have changed. And here's Canada number 2 today. Well, I guess it's last year. And 2024 was number 4. People think our country's not corrupt because people don't know how corrupt our country is. But in comparison, there is much more corrupt countries. And who is Mark Carney doing business with recently? Well, we've got China. Where are they? They're near the bottom. There they are. 57, 4th from the bottom. And their rank hasn't changed. And where's Qatar? It's not much further up. Number 44 right there. They've gone up slightly from 45. This is who Mark Carney's getting us into bed with. And you'll see the biggest drop here is America from 30 to 48. It's time for Canadians to wake up. With everything going on, we've got this one too coming out of the Globe and Mail. Ottawa in talks with Meta about restoring news to Facebook. Government officials are in talks with the tech giant about restoring news to Facebook as the Online News Act, which prompted the tech giant to end access to journalism on its platforms, is put on the table as a part of negotiations with the US. This is such a joke. You can't share news on Facebook. And what's especially ridiculous is I can commentate on the news and I can share that on Facebook, but news can't share news on Facebook. Also out of America, we've got Secretary Dissent here, once again commenting on Mark Carney.
What about Canada? We've got a bit of a rift there lately, and there's different accounts between you and Prime Minister Mark Carney about that call this week post Davos with President Trump. He says that he dug in and reinforced the message. You said that he walked it back.
I was on the call. Prime Minister Carney, in my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. Never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up. And he rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message. And that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiple larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. In the end, I think we will end up in a good place. It may not be a straight line.
Are you saying that they will face consequences in these trade negotiations, reopening the USMCA?
I am saying that I would not pick a fight going into USMCA to score some cheap political points. Either you are working for your own political career or you're working for the Canadian people.
Sadly, we know which of those two Carney's working for. It's himself. How Trump's members of his government here speak leads me to believe that if Trump is working with Carney, then they're not in on it. It's only him, maybe a couple people, but probably hardly anyone. So we're going to find out here if they do get a USMCA agreement, if they work something out, then it's probably unlikely that Trump has anything more to do with Carney, and he's just using all this as a negotiating for America. But if they just keep inflaming this, and then the election happens, well, it's going to look pretty suspicious. I don't know how many more times we can see threats of tariffs and keep seeing the poll spike before it wears off on people and it doesn't work. Maybe that doesn't matter. All they need to do is a couple more times, and even just a little bump is enough for Carney to get a majority. He should have called Carney a liar, but chose the high ground of diplomacy, something Carney seems incapable of doing. Just release a transcript. Let's see what was said. What happens when we walk away from the table and start sitting at other tables, Mr. Dissent? Don't threaten us. It never works. This is a dumb liberal comment. Canada does not survive without America. Like, that is the honest truth of it. Our country would absolutely crumble without America. Liberals can say all they want. They like the idea of fighting back against the evil Donald Trump. We'll get in bed with China to do it. It's just so illogical and ridiculous. Given how Trump has violated USMCA agreement, what sort of leverage does Dissent imagine these negotiations represent? So Trump hasn't violated the USMCA. It was actually Mark Carney who did. He put tariffs on things like backpacks because I was going to buy one, and then the tariffs on them spiked rapidly. Buying buying a backpack out of America, bringing it into Canada, it doubled the price. Basically, the sporting goods, there's a whole bunch of stuff that Carney put tariffs on, which violated CUSMA. So it wasn't Trump, it was actually Carney who violated it probably about 8 months ago. With all this going on, we got Don Davies losing his mind here, thinking Donald Trump is going to invade us with the military.
It is clear that Canada faces serious economic, political, and military threats from the Trump administration. These actions and statements constitute a new and troubling U.S. approach to security and constitute non-adherence to international norms. They follow repeated and continuing threats made to Canada since Donald Trump became president. Taken together, these developments have urgent, pressing, and profound implications.
Now, while Don Davies is completely insane here, he's doing the right thing. He should do more of this. This is going to get all those NDP supporters all riled up and wanting to support the NDP again. So keep doing it, Don. Get the new leader in there. Also, throw out the Trump rhetoric, full-blown TDS, get them supporting the NDP again, because that only helps the Conservatives. Don Davies is competing with Charlie Angus. Yeah, no kidding. Trump already ruled out military. He already did. Yeah, he's not showing up with the tanks. And really, he doesn't need to. If he flares things up, Carney gets a majority. Carney can just hand over Canada to Trump, and all these liberals are going to look so foolish. Scare tactic. Yeah, this is just a political scare tactic. I mean, maybe Don Davies believes it. Who knows? Moving ahead, we've got Pierre Poilievre absolutely destroying Mark Gerritsen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've been listening to the same rhetoric, the same speech over and over for years now. We saw this entire opposition motion in a platform that the Conservatives put forward. The leader of the opposition ran on everything in this motion in the last election, but he lost. Canadians chose not to go with what he was proposing. So my question to him is very simple, and I hope he uses the opportunity to be a little bit self-reflective. Has he learned anything from April 28th that would suggest maybe he should do something different? And if he did, what is that?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal member seems to be astonished that we would say the same thing after the election that we said before the election. And I can understand why he finds that counterintuitive, because that's the Liberals do exactly the opposite. The Liberal Prime Minister promised that he was going to get a deal with the Americans by July 21st. There's still no deal. He said there'd be counter tariffs. There are no counter tariffs. He said he'd spend less. He's now spending $90 billion more, having doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit. Wow. He said that there would be more investment. Investment has actually gone down. He said he would build, baby, build, but in fact, he has not approved a single solitary pipeline or removed a single anti-development bill. They do the opposite of what they promised before the election. We keep our word.
Yeah, Gerritsen walked into that one. The Liberals are a bunch of liars. They always say one thing, they do another. Corrupt liars, Parliament is corrupt. Wow, Pierre torched him.